everybody. So, this is the third installment of our watch strap series. I'm going to make another strap for this big guy because it shows up good on camera. And this is going to be the fanciest strap. So, we're going to do some edge dyeing and finishing. We're going to do a little bit of a liner, I think it's called. I don't think it's called a liner, but we're going to do a little bit of shape in the inside. We're going to do a fancy liner. This is the liner on the back. And this will be more of what a proper watch strap is. Again, watch strap making is a very specific niche and I claim no expertise. But this is how I make them when I want to make them extra fancy. And so I figured we could cap off our series. If you've done the simple first one and the medium second one, now maybe you want to get a little more fancy with your third one. I'm going to get my set of calipers. So I have two sets of calipers. I have one that doesn't move. This is my stitch line, set to about 3mm. And then I have one that does move, and I do whatever I need to with it. So what I'm going to do for this one is, this is a 22mm lug width, which is lug to lug, which is the width of the strap. I'm going to do a full 22mm because I have big wrists, so 22 is fine. Usually, sometimes when you have a 22, what you'll do is you'll make the strap taper down to like an 18 or a 20 at the buckle. But I have a 22mm buckle, and I like a nice thick strap, so we're just going to keep it 22 the whole way. I'm going to take my dividers and I'm going to set them to a little bit over 22. That'll be good enough. And this is going to be our top leather. So this is going to be the leather that you see. And I'm just going to scribe a line with my dividers here. You don't have to do the whole thing, just enough to get your ruler nice and straight. And we're going to get two of these strips, one for the buckle side and one for the regular tail side. So the first thing I like to do, because again, non-expert on this stuff, I like to make sure that I'm close, but I'm a little oversized on my strap, so I have room to sand down, which I am. Now, we need to make some marks. This is going to be pretty similar to the last video. We're going to make a mark. This is my own personal marks. You can make them smaller or bigger if you want. I'm going to make a mark at 3/4 of an inch. 1 1/4 inches, and then another 3/4 of an inch, which means right there. So we're going to glue here, we're going to glue here, and we're not going to glue here because our buckle, or this is going to be the part that our spring bar attaches to attach to the watch. So I redrew the lines without all the scribbles so you can see where we're going to skive from. Depending on the thickness of your leather, this is where our spring bar is going to go. You're either going to want to skive from before it or after it. This is it's pretty thin leather and it's pretty flexible because it's a chrome tan leather. So I'm just going to skive after it because this is the part we're going to tuck into itself. So we want it to be thin so that we don't have a bump at the top. Okay, so then our spring bar will go right there. Our fold will be there, but then when we fold this over, we have a nice paper thin skive there. Now, this is a chrome tan leather, so it's stretchy, but I would recommend doing this with everything. We're going to do some of our velvet on here because this is thin and it's a stretchy leather. And by putting this is a nylon pulp-based thin liner. This is going to prevent any stretching. And it's very thin, so you'll never be able to see it. So that's stuck down. Now we need to get some glue laid down here. Now, the first thing we're going to do on this one is we are going to glue in this strip of leather. I actually might cut it down a little thinner. Yeah, I will. And what this is going to do is it's going to give us some dimension and make it look a little bit more fancy. I've cut this strip to 3.5 inches. This is going to be different depending on the length of your strap. I have 8-inch wrists. And what we're going to do on this piece, I don't like skiving into cutting boards, but for a quick one we can do it. We want to skive this. We want to do a pretty long skive so that it's very gradual. And if you end up skiving some of the bottom off, that's fine, but we just want this to blend away once we glue it in there. And actually, I'm going to make it a little thinner. So depending on how wide your strap is and the look you're going for, the width of this is going to kind of be random. I'm doing like 3/8 of an inch, I guess, on a 22mm wide strap. That looks about right. Alright, so when the glue's dry, I'm going to take our little piece here and put it right at that line and then glue it down, or stick it down. It helps to have a roller for this part. but you can just use a bone folder or whatever too. And now we need more glue, because we need to glue our little flap down. So I'm going to glue here. It doesn't really matter where you glue. You just want to make sure you leave this part. There's no glue here for our spring bars. And then I'm going to make sure to get full coverage on this little part that we skived out, faded, so that it really sticks down well and our liner will look nice. I'm going to just put a little too much glue on that. So there we go. Now that this glue is dry, we have our line here. We're going to fold that over, stick her down there. I'm just going to go into the bone folder and kind of smush that in. Get a good stick on it, and then for a third time, well, we're going to rough this up first because it's an oil tan leather, and so we want this to, especially this specific part of it, we want a really good grip on the glue. So we're going to rough this up. And then we got to glue this again, but we need to pick out what we're going to use for a liner. So I'm going to use this French, oh god. I'm going to use this French coated stuff. I like using this for liners because it's on actually my own watch here too. It's coated, so if you get sweaty or whatever, it doesn't really soak anything up. It does feel a little bit more plasticky, but I'll take that if it means a little bit more longevity, a little bit less of a smelly band, which can happen. So I'm just going to cut off a little strip here, and we'll use this for the liner and everything. And we'll go here, and then all I'm going to do is cut an oversized piece, which is, this is more than enough. And we just want a right angle on one end, which we have. So we're going to skive this down a little bit. And now we can glue both of these for our final glue up on this side. And this will be the side with the holes on it. The other side will hold the buckle. So now we're going to move on to the buckle part. And you can see I got a lot of lines here because we're basically going to do what we just did, but on both sides of this one. So we have, this is where our spring bar is going to go for our watch. This is where our spring bar is going to go for our buckle, which means that we need to skive this and this down. I'm not going to give you measurements on this because, like I said, I have an 8-inch wrist. You might have a 6.5-inch wrist. So you're going to have to decide how long your strap is before you lay this out. So you can see I kind of skived a little too heavy on this, but we're just going to make this the buckle side, which is going to fold over, and we're just going to stitch across here. So you're never going to see this, nothing's ever going to happen to it. So we're just going to leave it because, you know, you don't ever do everything perfect. So there's no reason to throw that piece away. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to try my best with my lack of fingernails here to peel off the nylon liner that we're using. And I've sized this to just kind of fit right in here, like this. Just doing one piece for the whole thing. And then we are going to do a little bit of a shapey guy. We're going to put it right there. And
is that technical?
See, it is a technical watchmaking term, yes.
Right.
Or watch strap making term, yes. I believe Al Stolman coined it. He didn't even make watch straps. Actually, he probably did.
Classic
I don't want to say never. So what I'm going to do is pretty much the same thing, but you do have to pick a direction for this piece at this point. And that direction is going to be, this is going to be the watch side, that's going to be the buckle side. Mostly dictated by the little mess up I had there, which is fine. So we're just going to put this guy here and roll it. I don't really know why this is all, it's all guys today. All these pieces are male. Alright, so we got to glue everything up now. A little bit of glue there. Or a lot of bit of glue, I guess. A little glue there, and then glue this. Alright, now we're going to let that dry, and this one's ready to glue. So, I'm going to put this on my cutting board and use my grid We have our straight section here. I know this is way more leather than we need. I just cut it too big, so we're going to use it. And we just want this to be parallel to this as best we can. I'm not going to fully stick it down. I just want it stuck down enough to flip it, because what I want to do is I want all my shaping to happen on this side. Let's remember we have this little liner here. And this is going to be the side you see, and it's going to be the side that is not against your wrist. So we want this side to have all of the shape and the bottom to be nice and comfortable and flat. See, that's looking pretty good. And then we'll just trim it. So I made a little mark here with how long I want my strap in total. I'm using a 1-inch English punch. If you have a smaller one that fits, go ahead and use it. Whoa. If you want to spray in, go for it too. And now I'm going to go over to the power sander and just sand these edges down, because it's almost time to, actually, yeah, it's time to stitch this up. I have this all sanded down, and we have our liner looking really nice, and everything is stuck down really nice. So I'm going to make our stitch line. Now the only thing with this is you want to make sure to get your stitch line past your liner so that you lock this top part in, right? You don't want stitching below this. This could kind of flip up over the years, so we're going to lock it in with a stitch. I do have something special to show you. Check this out. I gotta put a bag down for this so you can see it. So check this out. Buckle Guy is working with us on a set of signature stitching chisels. Kaylina and I designed these. And we're going to be using the 3.85s today. These are the final samples. They say sample not for sale on them. But they will be for sale in a couple months. These are black and steel, polished teeth. They're going to come in 3.85 and 5 millimeters to start. They're going to come as a set of 3. And then a universal 1 tooth that works with any size. And we're aiming for right around $100 for the 3 set. So we're going to start using these in our videos, and because we're using them in real life to test them out. But so far it's been about a week, and we are more than excited about them. They're just beautiful chisels for the price. I don't think you can really beat them. So the branding, just imagine that gone. It's just going to have our logo on the sides on one side, and then the Buckle Guy logo on the other side, nice and minimal. And this coating is insane. We scratched it with one of the first samples. I scratched it like 400 times and didn't get through to metal. So very excited about these. So that being said, the tooth profile is called an olive tooth profile. I'm going to look on the side here.
This is debut video.
I'm going to look on the side here and make sure that I'm hanging over that liner. It's also a debut. I don't think I've ever sewn 3.85s before. This is going to be like way bigger than anything I've used before on camera. Which, to be fair, I usually use 5s for everything, but for watch straps, they're so small that I think the 3.85 looks nice. And I'm going to use 0.6 millimeter Ritz of thread. That is kind of chunky, but this is going on a 46 millimeter watch and a 22 millimeter strap. And I want to show you that this tooth profile is really nice because you can use it with thin thread or with thick thread. Olive is basically kind of a rounded diamond. So it's not as severe and it's not as sort of Western as the Weaver stitching chisels are. But it's not just a totally flat profile, and it's kind of a combination between diamond and French a little bit. But I don't really sew with French, so maybe we'll do French in the future, but right now we're just coming out with the 2 spacings of this oval or olive-shaped tooth profile. So I got to a place here where I don't quite have room for 2 holes. They're too close together. So I'm going to take my single tooth and just kind of space them apart a tiny bit. These are actually so sharp that you don't even need to hammer them. There we go. Now they're spaced apart equally, but they're not quite, they're going to look great. So now we get to sewing. Alright, so now our buckle side is dry and ready to be glued together and then glued again. So the first thing we're going to do, this is the buckle side. And we're going to press that down just like we did with the tail end. Or no, this is the side that attaches to the watch. This is the watch side. This is the buckle side. And we're just going to fold that over and stick it. And there's going to be a little bit of this here, but our keeper is going to go in here, so we don't want a lot of our liner to be in this.
But isn't that the back side?
Yeah.
Why are you molding the front side?
Because when we put the liner on, then we'll flip it over and mold the whole thing.
Oh.
Yeah. So now what we need to do is we need to size our liner on this one, because we're going to go from here to here. It's not kind of open-ended like the other one. So we'll do that now. I'm going to get a right angle on one side of this liner. And then I'm just going to use my cutting mat here to size it. I'm going to size it a little over what I need, because we're going to wrap the liner over the keeper. So we're going to need a little extra. And we can always trim it later. So we'll go here. And we don't need it this oversized, so I'm going to go, this ruler is 1 1/4 wide, so I know we'll have some extra by doing it this way. So I'm skiving both sides. One side I'm skiving a little bit shorter than, or a little bit more shallow. That's going to be the side that goes on the part that connects to the watch, because we're going to sew that in first. The side that's going to be on the buckle, I'm skiving a little deeper because I might have to trim it, and I don't want to have to go back and then skive more of it. So by doing a little bit of a deeper skive, it's going to give me like a 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch of trimming allowance that I can do without getting into the thicker stuff here. There we go. And now, ready for more glue yet again. So we're going to do this glue up here, and the way that we're going to do it is by leaving some of it unglued. So we're going to do a sewn in keeper, the kind of the more fancy way than the last time we did one in a video. And that means that we don't want to glue up the end where the buckle is going to be. So what I like to do is use my the fold over part as my stopping point. Then on the liner side, flip this way so I can kind of get a rough estimate. I'm just going to kind of put this here and make a glue mark so I know that I don't want to glue past that. That's all, and then we'll let this dry. So I'm going to take this, use my cutting board again, line up this side right where I want it, then flip it over and do the same thing as we did with the last one. Push that down in there. Once this is glued, we're just going to trim off the excess here, and then I'm going to go over and sand this down. You can see we did a little too much extra, which is fine. We'll just trim that off. So I'm going to go in here and just trim off like this much. And well, actually, I can get that straight with my skiving knife. I made it more crooked. I need to sharpen this knife, I think.
Just keep on trimming it.
Yeah, all the way down. No, look, it's perfect now. I have to skive it again, but it's perfect. Anyway, we're going to get this sewn up now. What we're going to do is we're going to sew down, over, and back up, and leave this space here open for our keeper. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and hold this sideways and pick a point at which I want to stop. That's going to be our point. Then I'm going to give myself kind of a rough estimate there of where we're going to poke our holes, and then we're going to start from the top and punch our way down. And in the middle, I'm just going to use a 2-prong. I'm going to mark out my stitches. And all we got to do is sew this up. So we have this all sewn in, and you can see on the back here, we left this flap open, and that is where we're going to put our keepers. But before we put our keeper in, we need to do all the edges, because obviously, once we put our keeper in, we can't finish these edges. So I'm going to, this is a chrome tan leather, and it can be difficult to burnish chrome tan leathers. A lot of times you have to paint them, but I'm going to use Tokonol after you guys told me to get it, and I did, finally. I kind of love it for chrome tan stuff. So what I'm going to do is, this is about 220 grit, so it's a little bit of a rougher grit. And I hit it with this really quickly. Then, this is like 400 grit. And this is all I'm going to use on this because I'm going to do a black dyed edge. I really, really have been loving the light stitching, dark edge, saddle tan. Just classic leatherwork look. And I think on this watch, which is very neutral, this will just be kind of a nice everyday look. So I have black in this, and I'll just have that. And all we're going to do is just dye all of this. So this is going to, it's a little weird, but you can kind of just hold it together and it'll burnish. It burnishes just fine on this design. And I'm just going to make sure I get mostly to the edge. If you're using like a really delicate leather, like a really delicate color, like a light color, you don't have to get all the way to the edge. Once we start burnishing and stuff, it'll kind of like round over. So that's about as much as I'm going to do. You only need one coat of the black, and I'll let that dry. Now, kind of like a cooking show. The tail part, I burnished that side, but I didn't burnish this side yet. So this is just dyed. Okay, so I have some, this is Tokonol. I'm going to use it full strength on this. And what I'm going to do is just put some on and use a wood slicker first. Now I just use 2 tool handles, which some people in the comments have said you have all these fancy tools, why don't you just get a wood burnisher? And to that I respond, because I'm lazy. I've always just grabbed a tool handle. I don't know, I'm not a huge fan of, I'm not a big tool collector, so, you know, my workshop, or my workbench is, Kaylina can attest to this, always a mess.
And why add another tool?
Yeah, we don't need more things floating around when I got plenty of good wood slickers in the form of tool handles. So, that's why I don't have a dedicated wood slicker, or edge slicker. Anyway, so I'm going to get this slicked down. Then what I do, now this is pretty much specifically for chrome tanned. I still use gum trag on veg tan, just because it's what I've always used and I just know the process. But for chrome tan, what I've learned with this Tokonol as I've been playing around with it is then I go back to my 400 grit. So I'm going to put more Tokonol on, and I go back to the 400 grit, and I'm actually going to like burnish / sand with the Tokonol on. And that seems to be the key for getting a nice slick edge on chrome tan without painting it with the Tokonol. And I looked it up, or I did a little bit of digging, and it turns out that there's acrylic resin and like glue and stuff in Tokonol, so it makes sense. You're basically edge painting without using actual paint, I guess. So we'll just do that, and then usually there's a little bit of Tokonol on the sides, and we can kind of reapply that, and then I'm just going to grab some canvas, and this should be good to go after this. Now, I'm not going for like the mirror finish, no, I'm just going for a nice even edge. And after this, it's important that you use just light pressure, because if you use hard pressure on this after, again, because it's chrome tan specifically, I've noticed it won't shine up, it'll stay dull, and with the light pressure, it seems to really shine up nice. So there we go, there's our finished edge. And then, because it's a watch strap, I'm just going to add some beeswax, and this will make it dull again, but we can burnish it up with the cloth to a shine. Okay, so all we have left now that we have all of our edges done is to make a couple of keepers. Now, I went ahead and burnished the edges on the keeper too, and this is just the strip that we're going to use. So, to size our keepers, they're going to be 2 different sizes. This one's going to go in here, so what I'm going to do first actually is I'm going to skive down a 1/2 inch on the top of the grain, and this is going to be the part that we glue to the other part to make the closed loop. Right. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over, put this right in here where it's going to live, and I'm going to add this piece because that's what it has to go over. We fold this like this, and then we're going to mark this. So this, we know we have to cut this here, right? Once we do that, we just flip it over and we skive a 1/2 inch of the back of this one. And then we glue her up. So super simple. And now I am going to do something a little bit different. I have a little belt staple machine, and I always staple my keepers. It's just something I like to do. All you have to do is throw a stitch in here and you're good to go. So that's the one thing where I'm going to deviate, just because I'm going to wear this strap, like I'll probably wear it in the next video because I like this watch a lot. And I just, personal preference, I like the staples better. So we're going to get this one done first, and then we're going to sew it in, and then we're going to get the second one made because it's going to be a little bit of a different size because it's going to wrap around the whole thing. So while that's drying, we are going to pre-punch our last stitch line in the whole thing here. I'm going to punch from the back to make sure that I get a good chunk of the liner punched. And then if you want to, you can flip it over and punch through the front so that you get the slants going in the right direction. That's all we need to do, and once we get our keeper stapled up, we're going to slide it right in there, and then we can just stitch everything up. So this is how we're going to do both keepers. I'll show you how to size the second one. However, I'm just going to show you how to put one together. You see where we skived the top grain here? We're going to use that as our lining up point for the bottom, and we're just going to stick it together. It's nothing fancy. Now, like I said, I'm going to use a staple, but if you don't have a staple machine or anything like that, all you have to do is take your little 2-prong, punch a couple holes, or you can do them this way, and just sew it together, and you're good to go. Let me throw a staple in this, and I'll show you how we're going to sew the rest of it together. So here is what it looks like when we have our little belt staple in. And all we're going to do is slide that in there and make sure everything fits nicely. I have a set of needles all threaded up here, and we're just going to sew across. Now, I like to do a little loop like this around the side. You don't have to do that though. And then it's just kind of normal stitching, except I'm going to backstitch the whole thing. Not so much for strength. This isn't particularly, it's not facing a lot of stress or anything, but it just looks better because it's such a short stitch line that if you do 3 back stitches, you end up with 2 single stitches, and it's easier to just backstitch the whole thing. But once this is done, if you wanted to, you could make a wider keeper and not do the second floating keeper. Floating is what it's called when you have the one keeper outside of the stitch line, which is what I prefer. I just do one big sewn-in keeper without a floating one, but I figured we'd do a fully traditional one for this video since we did the big keeper last time. And the one thing you want to make sure of when you're doing your back stitch here is that you get everything nice and stacked, meaning that your double stitches aren't crossing over each other and they lay nice and flat. And that's mostly just for aesthetics on this one, but in other ones, in other pieces, if the thread crosses over, it creates a high spot, and there can be abrasion, and it can be a point of failure. To size our second floating keeper, we're going to put our big, the big end that's going to have the holes into the keeper, and then we're going to wrap this around the whole thing. And I did the same thing as before, where I skived the top a bit. And then I'm going to wrap this around fairly tightly, and then make my mark. And from there, it's the same process. We're going to cut this, and then skive it a 1/2 inch, glue it, staple it. And with this one, we put it on when we're putting the strap on the watch, so the only thing left to do after this is to just punch our holes, and we're good to go. Alright, so I have this little tool I got off Etsy. It's just specifically designed to punch the holes of a watch strap. It's okay. The punches fall out sometimes. I just like crank down the Allen keys that hold them in, so hopefully they won't right now. I like to punch like 7 holes. You can punch as many as you want. And there we go. Let's get this thing put together. I forgot a step. We had to put a hole in for the buckle, so I'm just going to take a hole punch a hole, and then cut down both sides like that. Now we're finally done. You can see it looks really nice. This leather is gorgeous for watch straps. You can see where we did our insert. It gives us a lot of dimension where it comes up here. You can see from the side. On the back we have our nice liner and our floating keeper. So when you install the strap, all you do is this keeper just kind of floats around. That's why it's called that, I guess. Nice edges. I don't know what else there is to say about this kind of thing. But yeah, this is pretty much the fanciest strap that I know how to make. Short of doing a croc skin or painted edges, you can also use your edge creaser. I don't really have one of those. I'm not good with the one that I do have, so I like to keep them kind of plain. But that's going to be it for this one. So we've seen, you guys have made a ton of really cool watch straps with our other 2 tutorials, and I'm happy we were able to go from simple to more complicated with this one in kind of a 3-part series. I'll link the other 2 in the description, and thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.